Hello, hello! So today we're back with another build video. In it, we're going to be looking at whether you want to buy LDR or IE for your third item on an ADC crit build. And so what builds are we actually comparing? So the comment that specifically asked for this was asking whether you should buy IE or LDR after you'd bought a mythic item and then collector, and then determine which of these you want. So in this video, we're going to be looking at all six of these different permutations: Gale Force, Collector IE, Gale Force, Collector LDR, Kraken, and then Shield Bow. And so this page really just breaks down like the different stats of the different builds. Like they each have different AD values, attack speed values, crit chances. They all have the same lethality, the pen, and crit damage. This is not the important part, it's just a summary of the different builds. And so how are we going to compare them? So we're going to compare them based on how well they do for auto attacks and abilities. And the way we're going to do this is using something I'm coining performance efficiency. I already have one video on it for attack speed for each of the ADCs, and I'm currently making a video on performance efficiency for ADCs on attack damage, but that's taking a while because it's kind of confusing and there's a lot to go through, so that'll be out soon. But what do I actually mean by performance efficiency? Performance efficiency is basically a metric of how much does your damage increase when you buy 100 points of this specific stat. What I mean by that is, say you have 100% of performance efficiency. That means that when you buy 100 AD, your auto attack damage doubles, or it increases by 30% or 135%. I'm using this because it's a good champion agnostic way of doing these calculations, because it pulls in a lot of information that you don't get with just normal AD or anything like that. Because in this statistic also says basically how well does your champion scale with AD, and the better your champion scales with AD, the more percent pen you have to keep up with just the value of AD. And so explaining this graph now, on the left is performance efficiency, and then we have the 6 different builds that are in this blue color. And then we have the amp required, or I'll get to that in a second. And so all of these statistics are basically how much as a percentage of the base damage that your champion does with an auto attack at level 13 are you doing with this item if you had this performance efficiency for AD. So that's kind of confusing, but it basically, let's look at right here. So we're at 70% performance efficiency at the IE build for Gale Force. We're saying that when you have this specific item bot and your champion uses AD this well, your auto attack does 270% of your base damage if you had no items. Similarly, 30% means that if your champion used AD at a 30% efficiency, you would be doing 173% damage rather than 210. And so I went through and did this for all of the different builds, all 6 of them. And then this green one is amp. It's basically how much of a percent damage amp do you need from LDR's armor pen scaling and max HP scaling to make up for the damage that the other build already does. And as you see, and as I mentioned a bit ago, the better your champion uses AD, the more of an amp you need from those other sources, because you just use the AD in the other build because the IE build has more AD better, so you need some way to catch up for that. And the way this build does that is through armor pen and the max HP scaling. And so the reason that these ones are a little bit darker is that these ones don't ever really happen in real game. Generally, a champion, at least at the mid game to where we're talking about at 3 items, a champion's auto attack is going to be somewhere in here. And so I wanted to give an example of that. And I also did this in the tooltip just to make sure that my math is right, because that would be a little bit embarrassing. So for this example, we're going to be using Ezreal at level 13. And so his base AD is 93. And so we use that to calculate his performance efficiency by effectively just adding 100 AD to that and then figuring out how much does that increase his base damage. Two different ways to calculate it, they're both the same. The first one is you just do like V1 divided by V0 minus 1, which is the one I did here. And the second one is you do V1 minus V0 over V0. Both of these are just ways to calculate change. Do whatever works for you guys when you do this. And so what we found is that the AD, when you have the IE build, is 278 and a crit does 583 damage, versus with the LDR build, it has 238 AD and then 416 damage with the crit. You can use that to get the DPS with both the builds, which are as follows. And so we also figure out that we can use the same formula and see, okay, what is the damage amp that we need to match this difference? And we get this doing it empirically in-game, although I'd like to note that the in-game numbers are always a little bit off because they're not whole numbers. They round everything that you see, so this isn't perfect. But when we look it up in the table, what we'd expect with this performance efficiency of 107 over here, we'd expect around a 32 to 33% damage amp needed to catch up, which is exactly what we see. Like, it's within a percent of what we see in game versus the table that I made, which is awesome. It basically is showing that like this seems to work for a random champion, which yay math. And so a way that you can apply this now to figure out in game whether you should get LDR or IE is you just figure out like, does the specific champion that you're trying to hit that damage amp that you need? So here's an example of when a champion has 225 armor, they get about a, let's see, a 33% damage amp from the LDR. We're assuming that there's no max HP difference, even though they have a bunch of armor, but for sake of this argument. And so what you do when you check that in game is that you get these damages for crits and non-crits, which gives you the same DPS. Which means that like if a target has 225 armor with this build, it's a crapshoot which one is different. Like that's the inflection, or that's the break-even point, which is what this shows. And then another example of how you can combine them is we're looking at a target with 100 armor and 1200 bonus HP higher than yours. 100 armor has about a 23% damage amp, 1200 bonus HP has about a 9. You multiply those together and you get around a 33-34% damage amp, which is what you see where LDR now does more damage. So yeah, the way that you calculate this and the way you use this is you just look at the table, find where your champion is, and then find what amp you need, and then just multiply these together to find out if the champion that you're trying to hit would actually take more damage from IE or LDR. I like this because it's champion agnostic and it works on the entire roster with this build. And you can do this kind of analysis for any build in the game for any champion, which is why I'm really liking performance efficiency and why I'm going to be featuring it a lot more on this channel. But yeah, now let's go to abilities. So auto attacks crit, right? Which is why they're way more IE focused, like why this amp is pretty big, because IE gives you such a massive crit amplification, which makes it pull really hard. Abilities, on the other hand, don't have that, which means that LDR pulls harder, or like doesn't need to pull as hard to match it. Again, we have performance efficiency on the left. Performance efficiency for abilities can vary widely and don't really have like a lower limit as much as auto attacks do, but it's the same thing. For all of these builds, they're basically within an 8 to 18% amp required in like all real life cases in the game. So all you have to do for the LDR build to make abilities do more damage is pass like 18%, which you're gonna pass whenever a champion has like 60, 70 armor. So literally at all points in the game will the LDR build do more damage to like with abilities basically, or things that don't crit. And so the test ability that I did for this was Riven Q. So the base damage of Riven Q is 161 because it has a total AD scaling, which is included in the base damage when you're calculating performance efficiency. The damage when you have 100 AD goes to 226. So you calculate the performance efficiency just by dividing them and subtracting 1. So it's about a 40.4% performance efficiency for Ribbon Q for AD, which when you look it up, let's see, 40, you need about 10% amp to pass. So that's what we have here. And so I did 4 tests. So the first one was just like no scaling at all, 0 armor, 0 HP. So they're getting no value from the armor pen or the HP scaling, which you see like the IE does more because there's more AD. 40 armor though, it's already almost caught up. And also 0 armor with a bunch of HP, like with 1230 HP, it's caught up, and 1330 it's also caught up, which if you go to the scale is like between 9 and 12, which is about what you'd suspect. So yeah, for abilities, it basically breaks even at every point, like in the game where the LDR build will do more damage. And yeah, so summary. That was the spot check. We did the math. Okay, so the TLDR from this is that for auto attacks, you need between 27% and 35% damage amp from the pen and HP scaling for the LDR build to do more damage than the IE build for any champion in the game. For abilities, LDR will always do more damage. And the way that you figure out if the auto attacks have the scaling that you need is you just look here. So you basically take their armor. So say they have 151 armor, so it's a 28% scale. So you do like 28, and then, okay, how much HP difference do they have over you? Say they have 800 HP, then you multiply it by 6%. Okay, so you've got a 36% damage amp from this specific target. That's gonna always do more damage with LDR than IE is. So yeah, here's a quick way to figure out exactly whether you want to buy IE or LDR in any champion. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any other questions or any other build analysis that you want me to look into, please let me know. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. Wow, I always butcher this part. Have a great day. Bye-bye, guys.